Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. So, today's guest is Chris, and Chris lives in California. So, she is also a psychic medium and a healer. And we have been chatting before we came online. So, we do have a lot of common ground, and we're both really interested in Feng Shui. So, we've been having a chat about that. So, we'll share some stuff with you as you go along. So, welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So it's interesting that we have the same things in common, that we do the same things. So do you do readings as well?
My readings have shifted over the years. I definitely started doing more mediumship, but now I definitely do, I would say 95% of my work is working with people that have dealt with trauma.
Yeah. Yeah, I transitioned into that. I seem to start getting them with my healing work.
Hmm.
It was getting a bit out of my comfort zone, shall we say. So I trained in it about a year or so ago. I don't know, did the training for it and been doing a lot of people with trauma. How do you find that, like on your energy system, working with people that have a lot of trauma? Do you find that is can be a bit tiring for you?
I think in the beginning it was because I wasn't properly managing my energy around it. I think uh, because it's a lot, right? I mean,
Mm.
people have come to me with really uh, hard stories and some difficulties, and and I'm an empath, so I can feel it all, and it can be very intense. So over the years, I've been able to really be able to manage my own energy around that while people can still feel very safe to share and have that space and work on healing because you have to be open in order to help somebody heal, but then you're open to those energies. So it's kind of creating those safeguards that I have figured out through trial and error.
Mm. Yeah. I noticed that I was taking on board quite a lot of their stuff and it was sitting in my energy field. And sometimes it would take me a few days to be able to clear that from like just feeling I suppose heavy would be the and just not fully myself, I guess. And
Yeah.
then I realised, oh, I'm taking on a lot of this stuff and having to do more clearing work and meditations and stuff like that myself. But yeah, like, it was beginning to get people that had like addictions, sexual abuse, families. I see you deal with narcissistic trauma as well. And
Yeah.
it seemed to be a snowball that people would end up going from one situation to another till they get to a crisis point. And then
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like for you over there, but over here, when it comes to working with healers and people that do energy work, we're pretty much down the line, unless they know you or you're recommended or something. They seem to end up finding you when they really feel that there's no other option for them. So
Yes.
you get a lot by then. Is that the same for you over there?
Yes, that's a very good way to describe it. I feel that I'm a last resort often, unless, of course, I've been referred or they just happen to find me on, a podcast, a YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, I think because they come to this place where they still know there's healing to be done and they know that they can do it. But then I think they're really guided to us in some way, shape, or form because deep down they know there's something, or at least, I mean, I've had people that are just so desperate at points that they're just like, hey, I'll just see what you can do for me, and they'll be completely skeptical, and that's fine. I welcome the skeptic.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really mind either way, to be fair. I think it's probably easier if they are recommended. You don't have that other barrier to try and go through. But um, yeah, I've laid off it a bit this year. I'm not really doing much of it at the moment. Um, I just feel like my energy, my system needs a bit of a rest.
Yeah, it's important to
Because,
honor that. Yeah.
yeah. Do you know what energy type you are? Have you looked into human design?
I have, what am I, a generator?
Okay.
I'm not very into human design. I kind of looked into it and then I couldn't take all of it. I think that was it. It was when you have these systems and you connect with them and it's great and you feel you really identify it. And I did to a degree, but I felt like, yeah, that I wasn't able to take a good amount of it. So I just found myself rather, I don't know, I wouldn't say disinterested, but just distant from that
Yeah,
system.
yeah. I did look into it, you see. I don't even know how I came across it, to be honest. And I'm a projector, so
Mm,
we have less energy.
yeah.
High when it's good, but then when it depletes, we need more rest. So I
Yeah.
decided to live to my design, which is what I do now, and I find that works for me.
Yeah. And if it works, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Follow
yeah,
that.
yeah. I love it. Um, so when you do your work, I see it went online and I see you've got something on there called Spicy Old Souls. I love that. Tell me about that. How did you get that name?
Oh, that is such a good question. So I received this download that I am meant to guide old souls, and that there was going to be a system to help them heal because old souls have a lot of trauma. They have a lot of heaviness in their energy. And most of who I work with, they are old souls. You know, anyone who has dealt with narcissistic abuse identifies as a black sheep of the family, or an outsider in some way, is very likely an old soul. Old souls, I always say, they take on very, very challenging lessons. So, in order to work with the system, I said, okay, if I'm designing something, I want to create it in a way that, keeps it unified, really. So, when working on the trademark, you have to register the name. And I felt like I kept going for all these names, and it was like, no, that's not going to work. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. And finally, I had this aspect of I knew it was going to say old souls, but I was first going with old souls and their archetypes and working with that kind of structure. But then why I came up with Spicy Old Souls, because the acronym for it is SOS, and old souls often need a lot of help. So this system serves as like a scale to understand their energy, to understand where they're at, not just on a daily basis, but they can, but really just a life basis to really help them understand themselves and to ultimately help them heal, help them. And what healing ultimately is for an old soul is really shedding those layers, those heavy, dense layers that they have carried for lifetimes. And yeah, that's how that came to be.
I loved it. I just thought, oh wow, that's so cool. That's
Thank
really
you.
cool. And like, so what do you do then with your trauma people? Do you particularly have different things for, say, the narcissistic abuse, or does your stuff like everything incorporates and you can work with it, most people on the same level, or do you change it about slightly?
I can work with any trauma, and I do work with a lot of trauma. Most people find me because of
Mm,
narcissistic abuse. I would say more often than not, someone will have connected with me for that reason. But I start my sessions the same way, where I am connecting my chakra system to their chakra system, and I'm reading their chakras, and I'm seeing what's coming up and what their body is showing me. And I feel guided in that way. That's basically how
mm,
I started in this work. I would just be guided to this area and recognize, like, oh, this is a chakra and this is what's going on here. And then when you get into the deeper layers of that, who is this tied to? What event is this tied to? Why is this coming up in this prominent way? Because as you know, whatever is in the forefront of energy is the body saying, hey, look at this.
mm,
So that's how I will start most of my sessions, and then it will then spread out accordingly to the person. So in some cases, some people just really need to talk about it in a way to understand it. Not because I think therapy, while I am an advocate for it, can sometimes be challenging because it puts somebody in a position to relive the trauma and
yeah,
their body feels it all over again.
yeah,
So there are certain people that really cannot and should not do that. It
mm,
absolutely does not serve them. So I'll recognize that in their energy. I'm like, okay, we're not going to talk about this, but we're going to visit the energy around it if you're okay with that. And we'll kind of approach it in that way. Whereas other people we'll want to talk about it, and then we're kind of exploring the energy of it, right? So I'll feel all the people involved. I'll, be able to walk in the experience and be able to say, okay, well, when I see, if they have a story and they're talking about this person involved, and I'll be like, okay, well, I see this person's wound and what was attacking you. And so I'll look at it that way. And that's if we're talking about it. In other ways, I'm just doing some kind of energy healing where we're working with light energy, where we're working with calming the body, calming the nervous system. I'm a big believer in that. And I'm always looking for trauma responses. Do they have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn?
Mm.
Because that's always going to really tell me a lot about what their body does in a daily situation.
Mm. Yeah, it's quite hard to get out of that flight mode. Even like I've trained in it and stuff like that, but sometimes I have to pull myself up. I don't know if you do this as well, but if you've experienced a lot, you end up then becoming like we do this type of work because we have the knowledge, we have it firsthand about how it affects you and everything. But your system takes a lot of work, and sometimes you can get triggered and not even realize you're triggered and feel like, oh, my system's a bit off, what's going on, and then having to pull yourself back. So that's us being aware of it. But what
Yes.
about these people that are not aware they're living like that? They must be exhausted living like
It's
that.
so
'Cause,
draining.
yeah,
You're right. Yeah. To have no idea, but to be that tired and feel like you're just done. You can't handle the intensity because it's energy. It's the intensity of that energy, and trauma energy is very heavy.
yeah. Yeah, it seems like we do work quite similar as well. It's interesting, isn't it? How
It
like
is
people
interesting. I love
sort of
that.
are drawn to each other. Because even when I was picking people to do the podcast, I mean, many people came forward, but I was going by the energy of the people. And
Mhm.
I must admit, I've had some really brilliant people on, and I've had some really lovely, interesting conversations, and getting their viewpoints and their wisdom and their insights coming through that's similar but different. And I think they land differently as well to certain people, don't they? They're your energy, your
Yeah.
resonance, that people that listen as well. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. I mean, it's such a pleasure too to connect with somebody when, we have these same experiences and very similar aspects of, just what we do in our work and probably similarities in life in general. So, I always love how the universe brings people together.
Yeah, yeah. And we were talking earlier about feng shui. Very
Yes.
like I love this subject as well. So we was having a little chat beforehand. So Chris is I think some of the people that will be watching this know about Marie Diamond.
Hmm.
And I've mentioned it before in my previous like groups as well. I don't know about on podcasts. But Marie Diamond is, I don't, we should say she's a feng shui master because she is a medium, a psychic. She's a lots of other things, isn't she? She's a dowser
She
and
definitely
helping.
doesn't talk about the other things, but
Oh, I
yes, she's
know.
definitely very psychic, very in tune.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
but
was I did say to you like I met her a few years ago now, and I've been waiting for her to come on and do a podcast with me. But you've signed up to her course, so you'll be
yes,
doing
I
that.
I am currently working to be certified as a feng shui consultant under her program. Yes,
Yeah.
because I mean I've always appreciated feng shui even before knowing about Marie Diamond. I was very drawn to it. And my reason for being drawn to it is because I lived in a home that was making me very sick. And this was before I was in tune with any of my own personal gifts. At that time, I just would have called myself an intuitive empath. But I just felt terrible in this home.
Mm.
And I chalked it up to, being a young mother and having young children and being exhausted. But I started to notice when I wasn't home, I felt better. And I said to my husband, I was like, there's something with this house. I just know it. And I ended up because just as we were talking about when people come to us as a last resort, I called a feng shui consultant because I was like, I don't know
Right.
what else to do. I'm, a doctor after doctor appointment, no one knowing what was going on with me. But when the feng shui consultant came in, and I didn't tell her, about the health stuff. I just was kind of more wanting to see what she saw.
Mm.
And she said, "This is a very poor house position for health." It was one of the first things she says.
Uh,
And I was like, oh gosh. And but then when she looked deeper, she said, it will affect you, but it will affect your husband more. And it's actually going to make him very sick. And at the time, we didn't see that because I was the one that was sick.
yeah.
And about maybe like 3 or 4 months later, he had a MRSA infection, a staph infection. And it was very scary, of course, because I didn't know it at first. And thankfully, he was okay. But the crazy thing was, um, in that house, he had two other staph infections after that. And I finally was like, we got to leave. We're out. We're done. And he has not gotten a staph infection since. And
Yeah.
so some may chalk that up to coincidence. I But once I put all the feng shui cures in place, I was like, okay, that was the first thing of like, okay, we kind of got it managed. But at that point, I said, I'm not risking this. I'm not risking your health. And, we had 3 young children at the time. I said, we are going to a place, I worried about their health as well. So I was like, we're leaving. But it turned out that the home, just for anyone who wants to learn it, why was this house making you sick? So it was below street level. So our driveway drove down, and that's a very poor energy for feng shui. So you literally are bringing your health down. You're bringing your energy down. And so every time you're driving down, you're going down. And you think of that and just what that is energetically, just as you say it, it's like, okay, there's probably something not good at the constant decline. And while there's cures for that and people can work with that, uh, we were past the element of the cures being enough. And I think especially because I was so sick first that I didn't even want to deal with it anymore. And it
Yeah. It
was
sounds
good
like it
to
was
move.
just accumulating in that
It
spot.
did. It did
Yeah.
accumulate. Yes. And interestingly enough, the woman that lived in the house prior to us, she was very difficult to deal with, according to the realtor. But it turns out her husband had been ill.
Right.
And so in hindsight, I was like, I wonder if it was the house.
Mm. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? When you sometimes you just got to think outside the box, haven't you, when these things come up?
I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
Okay,
Energy
you're
is
not.
everywhere, right? We all
Yeah.
are energy. So, yeah, those things affect us. I'm a true believer, but that's what opened my eyes to feng shui and why I started to get into it, just personally at the time and just starting to understand it, learn about it. And, when I started working with it with clients, it was just really helpful to have the history of how it had made me and my husband so sick and how
Yeah.
then that shifted after. So it's just nice to be able to help people in other ways.
So we mentioned the picture behind you. So would you like to tell
Yes.
people why that's there?
Yeah, so mountains are very good for feng shui when they are behind you where you work. So this is my office, and I put mountains behind me. And you could have other things behind you. I think a lot of things that are good to have is stuff that really means something to you. Like we talked about your painting behind you. That's very powerful. It's beautiful. It represents you. So, like for example, like let's just say I didn't like mountains or I didn't like the picture and I just put it behind me saying, oh, mountains are supposed to be good for my energy. There's going to be a little conflict in that energy if I'm not connected to the picture. So I do feel there are people that will just throw a cure into place but not connect to it. Um, and I think it's important to understand how you're working with your space, and you should really connect with what you're doing for it in any way. But for feng shui, that's why it's important. Your energy should align to it.
Yeah. So that's a lot having stability behind you, isn't it? Having the mountains.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
stability, confidence.
Yeah.
I actually used to have, what did I have? It's like celestial stuff, like sun
Right.
and moon and stars. And that was fine.
Yeah.
I said that my business was still, I would say, growing. And then I decided, okay, I think it's time for mountains. And I
Mm.
noticed I put the mountains in and my business was growing more. So could it be coincidence? Maybe,
Mm.
but I
Yeah,
like to believe the feng shui worked.
yeah. I have been looking at them. I haven't been able to find anything that works with my space. So that's why I haven't got anything like that. But also you can have the running horses as well, can't you?
Yes.
That's quite good. They're quite nice. So I like
Yeah.
those. But maybe I might paint something that is inspired by me. And then, like you say, I've got the connection to it.
Yeah.
But we were talking earlier when we started doing the cures and things like that, it's you have to be careful that you don't end up looking like a Chinese restaurant
Yep.
and you keep buying all the bits and pieces. I have the waving cat over there.
I have one too. Yep. Yep. And yep. Here's my
Every time
little
I go past, I unlock it to make sure it's
my
the
little cat. Hmm.
gold one. That looks like it come out of a Chinese restaurant, to be
Yep.
fair. But,
Yep.
yeah, we place things around to help secure the space that we're in. So you're obviously going to learn more about it. And Marie works with your energy number and your colour and your personal direction. But as we were talking earlier, I'm sort of old school. I work with the Bagra more.
Yeah.
And the reason why I started doing that, because many years ago, I've always done spiritual work and clearing and everything. I was into interior design. And while I was going in doing that for people, I was looking at the energy in their places and the space. So I started to really study it and incorporate it into the design and the layout and everything that I was
Mhm.
doing. So I noticed that when I go to people's houses or somewhere that's got a lot of stuff, um, and I do sort of move things around a bit sometimes if I know them quite well and go, oh, I shouldn't be there type of
Yeah.
thing. But it's brought to mind because my parents are having are struggling a little bit in their place they're in now, and I'm finding the energy's not as good as it should be. So I'm going to go there, and I always do clearing and everything when I go there. But talking to you, and you saying about going down, their place doesn't go down, but they're at the end of a cul-de-sac. So the energy comes straight down to theirs, and they're in that space. So what I'm thinking is because they moved the trees and the bushes and cut them down, it's directly coming in and
Right.
it's
Right.
made an impact. Do you agree with me? Do
I
you think
do
that could be
feel that, but
it?
I also I'm drawn to the center of the home. So I would look at that as well because the center of the home this year is it's all health. And it is not it's definitely one we have to look at and protect this year.
I'm trying to think. So I have to work out the layout and to see what actually is in the centre. But I
Mhm.
wondered if, like, because they chop trees down and bushes and things, there's nothing blocking that energy. It's just coming straight down
Straight
the
at
end of the
them.
cul-de-sac and hitting them. And maybe it's just too much.
Yeah, it could be too intense. Absolutely. I'm a firm believer in that because and it really also depends on the area and the neighbors and how the street is set up. So it's looking at those things as well. But yeah, I mean, something as simple as a bush at the end to help block it could be something,
Yeah.
you know, or just something you connect with, like an angel statue, or something that you feel connected to. It's actually why a lot of people put lions at the end of
Yeah.
their driveways. So
Yeah.
all good
I used to
protective
have them
elements.
outside my back door in my other place. My daughter's got them at the moment because I haven't got anywhere to put them just now. But yeah, I had those sitting there. Um, yeah, I think it's good to really look into it and have a look around. What about colours? Are you into colours as well? I'm not
I
difficult here. I'm renting. I can't put like coloured paint on the wall and stuff. But do you do
I
that?
do like working with colors. I will say I'm probably learning more from Marie Diamond in that. When I first started working with the feng shui consultant I was doing when I was still learning, uh, it wasn't as much colors as it was with elements. She really loved working with elements. And I mean, colors represent elements. So
Yeah.
when we start learning more of that as well, But she would, just, metal and wood and water and fire and all that, just, or metal is water and this drains this. And she would always be kind of focusing on those elements.
Yeah.
And I remember being so confused in the beginning. And especially what really confused me was the fact that it changes every year.
Yeah.
I was very naive in the beginning because the first year we put all the cures and everything in place, and I thought we were good. And I thought that was it. And I didn't realize that, oh, well, the flying stars change and you need to focus on that. And um, yeah, yeah. So that, and I learned that the hard way because I had crystals in an area that I shouldn't have, according to flying stars, that following year, and it was draining energy and highlighting energy it shouldn't have. So that all things learned by trial and error in that.
Yeah.
So, but by the time I started working with people and I understood more about the flying stars and the Bagua and then, like I said, I eventually got with Marie Diamond's work because I do like that she works with colors. I think
Mm.
it's really nice how we have colors that really work for us personally, as
Yeah.
well as colors that work for our space. I just think that's really neat.
Yeah, I love that. And she does dowsing as well. And actually, I did see something that she did a little while ago, a podcast. So she's got the dowsing rods, and
Mhm.
where she goes around and checks the energy to see what
Yeah.
the underlining things were. Maybe it's a water pipe that's running under your house or under your bedroom if you've got a bungalow, say, or the electrical stuff that you've got all in your room. And after actually watching her podcast, I can't remember who she was doing it with, I actually took a clock out of my room. It was an iPad, my old one, and I'm trying to think of what I'm going to do with it. I refunctioned it as a clock because
Oh,
I didn't have a
God.
clock in there. So
Yeah.
it was in my line of vision as well, which was a bit annoying when it lit up overnight. And I thought that's probably not helping anything at all. So that
Yeah, they all
out.
drain. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the silly little things, isn't it, that we just do and not really realizing that are having an impact on our well-being or our sleep patterns and stuff. But the
It's true.
dowsing thing I found really interesting. I do it with a pendulum, but I mean, you can do them with the rods as
Yes,
well.
I also will use a pendulum, but the dowsing rods are great.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. I mean, it's all tools that I think can help us. And uh, you know, for myself, when I started, I just was using my body, right? And I probably still rely on that a lot because I trust my gut and I try, yeah, I'm primarily clairsentient, so my feelings will come into my body um and I wouldn't always know what, but I'd be like, something feels so off here. Well, it's kind of like how I knew something was wrong with the house.
Yeah.
I just felt it. Something's not right. So
Yeah.
I would say to anyone, trust that. If you have this feeling, especially about those, like you said, those little things, if you have some little thing that you're like, I don't know if that looks right there, that's probably your instinct saying, move
Mm.
it. Or
Yeah.
because oftentimes, and you probably have dealt with this with people, is people will hold on to things because it's connected to somebody, but they don't like it.
Mm.
And, especially if it's a loved one that has passed and, oh, my great aunt gave me this trinket that I don't like at all because it reminds me of these terrible things or
Mm.
something of that nature. We really need to consider that that's not serving our space and our energy. And I know that's very hard for people to do when there's an emotional attachment.
Yeah, I said that about exes. Your exes, like if they buy you jewelry, say for Christmas,
Mhm.
birthday, or whatever, and certain items that you
Yeah,
keep, maybe it was expensive and you really loved it at the time, but
yeah,
all that attachment that's still there, even though the person's not there. So you've got to get rid of it, I'm afraid.
yeah,
Pass it on or sell it or do something
yeah,
with it. Why are you keeping it? Who wears jewelry still from an ex if it is, especially if
exactly.
it didn't end well? Would you really
Yeah,
want to? You wouldn't, would you?
yes. And that's a great example because we are holding on to a memory. And when there's a lot of negativity tied to such memories, we're literally keeping that in our space and in our energy on a daily basis.
Yeah. I see you do call detachment as well. You
Yeah,
cut cords. Yeah. So it's
I
a prime
do.
example where people don't realise there's a call detachment going on. Um, what do you
And they
get
keep
called
it.
to do them for? Is it usually to do with a breakup or something, or are you going back over like many years cutting them?
It will depend. I'll always feel guided because I do feel when there's a cord that's not meant to be cut. I had one client actually rather recently, and she had had a terrible breakup, and she was understandably distraught, and she wanted very badly to have me cut the cord. And when I connected with her, her guides stepped up very quickly and were like, "No, you do not cut this cord. It's not time." And they essentially told me that cutting that cord would have actually hurt her more than allowing the feelings to process, because she was essentially trying to use this cord cutting to not feel. So if I would have cut the cord, or at least guided her to cut the cord, it would have made her feel in such a different way and not a healthy way. And and it very likely would have reattached. I mean, let's be real, because those kinds of cords, they're tricky, and they're tricky for a reason. And almost every cord we have has taught us something. I
Mm.
would say pretty much every cord we have has taught us something. I mean, but but I always trust guidance in that regard. I just because a client's coming in that says, I feel I have this cord and I want it cut, I will never guarantee that that's the best thing, because I'm always looking for the highest and best of all involved.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you have to do them more than once. If they're thinking of you constantly, they're trying to reattach that all the time. And sometimes you get the inclination and think, oh, why have I thought about that person today? Why have they
Mhm.
come into my mind? And, oh no, they're like thinking about you. There's something that's reminded them of you, or unfinished business, or whatever it might be. And then you have to go in and like cut them again. But I know that if somebody comes to mind for me, I think I can guarantee that they're probably thinking about me, and give it a while, I'll get a text, an email, or something
Yeah,
will come.
yeah. Yeah, I get a little
Here it is.
yeah, for me I find the tricky ones are the ones that are connected to narcissistic relationships, because there's often a dark entity attached when those cords are still present. Um, so I have to cut the cord to that and help them cut the cord to that. And some people get freaked out by that, and understandably, but dark entities love narcissism. So I'm almost at the point where I'm just looking for them. Like, where is it?
Yeah, interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm. So what would you be your typical narcissistic um, client then? What would it be? Mother, uh, relationship one? Where would you go with
I
this?
get it all. I wouldn't even say there's a common element anymore. It's parents or spouses or ex-spouses. Or
Mm,
I do have a lot that are even in the process of divorce, because they tend to be very challenged by what it is to break up with that type of person, especially when there's children involved. Um, it's incredibly challenging when there's children involved. So uh, and those are a lot of the referrals I get, because people know each other. Oh, Chris really helped me through this. You need to go to Chris on this. And so a lot of times what I'm doing is bringing clarity
mm,
of really helping them understand the tactics. I mean, because narcissists often seem like they just share this playbook, and they're all doing these very similar damaging tactics. So I help bring light to that for people, because when they start to understand that, oh my gosh, that's a thing. It wasn't just me. And then helping them not blame themselves for that, because we can then feel very angry that we didn't see it, we didn't realize it. But narcissists are very good at making others look like a problem and making them feel like they've done something wrong and they need to fix it.
mm,
So, uh, yeah, and that's really in those stages of those types of breakups, divorce, especially. If someone has had a narcissistic parent, that's a little different, because that usually relates to CPTSD, where they just have had this trauma reinstilled over the course of their lives, and it'll depend what the trauma is. I personally dealt with physical, emotional, and that caused different elements in my body, and having to understand that. So, in some cases, though, words people say can hurt more than if they got punched in the face.
Yeah.
So it's working through those elements and, like I said, helping people understand.
Mm.
So that's a lot of how I'll start, is just helping them understand,
Yeah.
like, what is narcissism and how has narcissism affected you and your energy body? Because that does something, especially over the course of many years.
Yeah.
And then helping them shift to the person they want to be, because a very common thing for people that have broken up with a narcissist is they are often in a rush to find the next partner. I find that very common because
Mm.
they're looking to be saved. And that's a common element of whether you're raised by narcissists or you are married to one. If you married one, you have a high likelihood of having a narcissistic parent as well and just not realizing it until you start to understand narcissism. So it's just, again, like I said, understanding these elements. It's challenging, and it's like a
Yeah.
web.
Can you give some examples for people that are listening, to something they could look out for?
Manipulation is a big one. Those are the more subtle elements. Just saying things like, or a really good one is apologies. A narcissistic apology is not a genuine apology. So if a narcissist apologizes, and I say that like kind of almost like in italics, they're usually doing something like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And well, I had to do this because, well, I'm sorry, but, and then they'll usually deflect. Other elements is just basic communication. If you try to tell a narcissist that they've done something to upset you, see how they respond. A healthy person is going to be like, oh, wow, if let's just say they don't apologize, but they're confused, like, oh, let's talk about this. Let me understand that. A narcissist is going to get angry, defensive, or deflective. They'll blame you, or try and dismiss it and try and convince you why it wasn't an issue and how you saw it wrong.
Mm.
So there usually is not an apology in that regard. But oftentimes if they say the words I'm sorry, like I'm sorry you feel that way, a lot of us are conditioned to believe that's an apology. Like, but not recognizing to say the words like, don't be sorry for my feelings. Be sorry you did that. And really, what an apology is a commitment to changing behavior. And that is why a narcissistic apology is usually not authentic, because they don't change their behavior. And often they get worse over time. So it's recognizing those elements. Um, Trust your gut, because every single time I have worked with someone, especially if they had a narcissistic partner, they have always seen the red flags, but even before they were red, when they were like orange.
Yeah.
They know, they see it, but they usually have something that convinces them otherwise, because narcissists are incredibly charming, especially in the beginning. And they're like, oh, but they're so great and they make me feel so good. And if you have a trauma bond with them, then that makes that even stronger. So it's recognizing those elements. Are you connected to this person because you feel so understood and you feel like you have found this hero because you've had trauma that you haven't addressed previously?
Mm.
It's There's so many different elements. It's not a one size fits all, unfortunately. But I will say that the biggest thing is trusting your gut in the beginning. And then if you're in the depths of it, and usually when people find me, they are in the depths of it. So that's why I'm bringing that up,
Yeah.
is starting to heal yourself. You are not going to be able to change that person. The only person you could change is yourself. If you're dealing with a volatile narcissist, that needs to be done quietly, because that could be a safety issue. So when people talk about putting up boundaries up towards narcissists, a volatile, complete overt sociopathic type of narcissist might actually hurt you and can. So those are the type of boundaries we have to be more careful with structuring.
I don't suppose you could change a narcissist, can you? It's
No.
their way they are. Just learning to adapt to it. Yeah, I've met a few, and even when you get the apology, and I have to chuckle to myself. I
Yep,
mean, what else can you do? I mean, if you
it is
confront
laughable.
it,
Yeah,
yeah, if you
you're right.
confront it, you all get volatile. So you just think, yeah, whatever. Why'd you bother? It's
That's
got,
why, and that's a really good just warning sign. If you are afraid of somebody's reaction, or you know it's not worth it to broach a subject because you already know how they're going to respond and it's not going to be good, that is someone who has narcissistic personality disorder. And it is very, and I say that knowing that that's a challenging thing to say because even psychiatrists and psychologists will say they are incredibly difficult to diagnose because very few of them seek out help. It's always the people that have been affected by them that are seeking help and healing.
yeah, and they haven't got a problem. It's everybody else,
So
anyways.
everybody else is the problem. It's not them. They have no ability to be self-reflective.
Yeah. I did see something a while ago where somebody was talking about the fact that they couldn't tell their parents something. They were talking about a trauma,
Hmm.
and the person they were talking about was, say, a therapist, for work, better words. And they said to them, no, that's not the trauma. That is a trauma, but that's not the trauma. The fact that you couldn't tell them, say, parents, for instance, that something and you felt unsafe or there was this problem or whatever, you didn't tell them because part of you felt that you couldn't, there's your trauma. You
Yeah,
didn't feel
exactly.
safe to go back to that. So there will be people listening to this will go, well, you didn't tell your mom and dad stuff for a reason because
Yeah,
there was something there and that your trauma was right back to the beginning because you didn't feel safe enough to be able to tell that person what was
exactly.
going on. So it's a long road, isn't it? And I find that even with people I work with, it starts back there, and then they've got the trauma parent, they've got the parents, and then they may have a brother or sister who also follows, and then it's also
Mhm.
connected in the family because everyone
Yeah.
falls out, and then they marry one
Yeah.
or a couple
Yes.
until they get it. And I'm laughing because this is my story, but I did get it in the end, and which is like now why I help people with it. So, how did you get into it? What made you go there to do the work
I
you do?
I was raised by two narcissists. They are both on opposite sides of the narcissistic spectrum, because I do feel it's important to discuss the fact that it is a spectrum. A lot of people, we have that textbook classic narcissist that's more overt in nature, but a covert narcissist is rather manipulative and can really mess with your mind and emotions. So I have both. My mother is a covert narcissist. My father is an overt narcissist. He is incredibly volatile, violent, and just would have very irrational reactions and behaviors to the smallest of situations. It was very hard to anticipate that man's mood and emotions, but we all knew to watch out. My mother, on the other fact, would enable him and also just be incredibly manipulative and lie a lot. And it was challenging to be raised in that environment. But ultimately, I didn't see that it was narcissism. I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. So I had a lot of self-hatred. I had a lot of self-esteem issues. And it wasn't until I was out of the house that I started to see like life's not so bad. This is actually okay. And uh, when I started to have children is when I started to recognize levels of narcissism within myself. Because anyone that knows narcissism knows that this is a generational pattern that gets passed on until somebody says, this ends with me. And what I didn't recognize in the beginning is that we often get tunnel vision when we want to heal these elements. So my tunnel vision was very focused on hitting because I was hit so much by both of my parents. I swore I wouldn't hit my children, thinking I'm breaking a cycle, and I was, but it's not the same as really understanding what narcissism is, what it does to you, and to break that pattern, you have to understand the depths of it to order to truly break the cycle where you're not bringing the emotional elements into it. Where often the tunnel vision is usually related to something physical or a specific event, like, oh, this made me feel so bad, I will never do that to my children. So that's, like I said, how the tunnel vision is created. It's based on our worst trauma, usually, or one of our worst traumas. So over time, uh, I knew it was probably good to have some distance, but I didn't. And my father hit my oldest child when he was only 2 years old.
Wow.
And my mother blamed me, saying I was making a mountain out of a molehill, as she often liked to say, how I always make things a big deal and I'm being so dramatic, and then trying to convince my son that it didn't happen the way he remembered. So I literally watched her do all the tactics she did growing up of, oh, it's not as bad as you think it is. And my dad actually was apologetic. And I think that was maybe the only time he's apologized to me over anything in my life, if I'm remembering correctly, but I would have to really look at that. And I chose to forgive him and I chose to continue a relationship with them. But it was another 8 years and he threatened to hit my husband. And I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Mm,
But anyone who's in these kind of relationships knows there's a pattern, there's a cycle. And that is why it is difficult to leave these relationships because there are elements of them that are really good that you love and you want to be with and you want to be there for the good times and share in that and, have your family and your kids experience it. But for me, I wasn't willing to sacrifice my family and their safety anymore because I feel I should have cut them off when my son was hit. And I'm still working on forgiving myself for that one. But cutting them off, while it was the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life, it absolutely changed my life for the better. I have so much peace. It took a while. I will not glamorize that. That first year was incredibly, incredibly difficult. I had to really work on healing my nervous system. Um, but it ultimately, my healing journey opened me up to spirit
mm,
because all those trauma layers that kept my soul very heavy allowed me to connect. And so that's why while I was healing and I was starting to see people in spirit, I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was losing my mind, to be honest, at first, but it it was eye-opening and it ultimately led me to do this work. And when you're raised by narcissism, you pretty much become an expert in it. And man, was I raised in it.
yeah. I think a lot of people that do this work have experienced it.
They do. Yeah.
I think you've got to have to be able to understand it.
You have to understand it. Even people that go to therapy, I say you really need to find someone that understands narcissism
Mm,
because when they don't understand the depths of it and the emotional turmoil and trauma that is created by those relationships.
yeah, it takes a lot of work to get yourself back to
A
being,
lot of work.
yeah. So anyone listening to this, if you experienced these type of things that Chris has been saying, it's not a quick fix. It takes a lot of work, and even after we've done our bit, you still have to carry on doing the work. It doesn't just go. I always
No,
find there's other layers that start coming up once you clear stuff. It just keeps going. Then you got the generational stuff and everything else that goes in it, past life things to deal with. So yeah, it's a bit of a journey. But if that's your path on this lifetime to learn these lessons and deal with stuff and clear it and heal it, not just for yourself, your kids and future generations, then it is what it is. And you get on and you do it and you go through the layers. And it's not easy and it's painful and it's difficult and it brings up a lot of stuff and you have to sit there with it and you have to rationalize some of it and think, did I just choose this life
hmm.
to
Why did I
be
do
with
this to
them?
myself?
Did I tick all the boxes before I come down here? But yeah, you get there in the end. So I always think my saving grace, I don't know if you ever think this, but it's like, oh, maybe I might get an easier ride next time, if there is a next time.
Well, I always say old souls pick the most challenging lessons,
Yeah,
and it's because we've done the easy. So I think a lot of us, especially in this time, and especially the ones that see themselves as cycle breakers, I think a lot of us are kind of done. We're
yeah.
like,
Oh
we
God,
don't want
yeah,
to come back to this planet again.
yeah,
So let this be it. Let me heal this. And I don't think that's the intention in the beginning when we're on the healing journey. The healing journey is self-preservation of I'll do anything to feel better. And then ultimately, as we awaken and the spiritual elements come in, it's like, okay, how can I make sure I don't have to go through this again? Because
yeah.
yikes.
Yeah, and I think it again for anyone that's going through it or witnessing it, it's trying to find the blessings in there, the lessons, and trying to find some joy and a reason to carry on within your life. I think that is just as challenging when you've gone through a lot of darkness to find some light in there and like-minded people as well, which is why I like doing these podcasts because I do find other people that have gone through it, and I think when people are listening and not maybe met people, or maybe they have similar, but it's also bringing it to light that you're not the only one these things have happened to. Unfortunately, it's quite common, isn't it? But,
It
or
is,
maybe
and
it's just in our era that we're clearing a lot of it at the moment. Perhaps it's just that. Obviously, a lot
I
of
think
it.
that's a lot of it. More people are aware and willing to make the difficult decisions because previously, in previous generations, it was more about obligation and fear. A lot of people will reference the Bible, honor thy mother and father, and you know, but if you have parents that are affecting your mental health and well-being, you gotta look at that. Yeah, I remember as a child, I wasn't even a teenager yet. I would pray to God. I came from a religious family, so I would pray to God asking me to take me because I felt that my parents hated me so much and their lives would be better without me. Now, some may look at that as like suicidal, when I wasn't doing that in those elements and trying to self-harm, but I would absolutely ask to not be here anymore. And I think that's a really
Mm,
powerful thing that things go through and a really strong element of darkness that we experience in these type of families. And I think I love the fact that more and more people are bringing light to that, that
yeah.
no, you're not alone. And but the healing journey feels very lonely. It does. I mean, even
Mm,
when I went on it personally, and I'm still on it, of course, I think we are all on a healing journey. But I have a loving, supportive husband. I have amazing kids, but it still felt very lonely because it was my journey to walk, and it was my parents I had to deal with, and all those elements of my own traumas. So you can have a loving, wonderful support system, but it'll still feel isolating and lonely until you start really shedding those trauma layers. And when you do, it starts to feel a lot better and you feel less and less alone. And then you start to feel just more like who you're meant to be.
yeah. And I think like being older, you've gone through the marriage, you've gone through the kids, got grandkids now. That's something you get to a certain level within your life, and then you have to be find that way to be happy just being. So
Yeah.
you hadn't had these distractions of a husband, the kids, and like all the other things that you get along with and you do, and you heal to a certain level. But I find a lot of the older people that I work with have trouble with loneliness, being by themselves, trying not to self-medicate, drink, or whatever else they try and do as they get to a certain age, and then just finding that place of just being able to be and just accept everything and not having any judgment. I'm trying to find the words here, but it's a whole new level when you get a bit older than what it is when you're younger as well, to try and find that peace inside. And I think obviously there's probably another level as well when you get to the near to the end of life. when you're going back over lots of stuff and you're revisiting things and thinking about people. So I think that again is another level that takes maybe some healing as well before you decide to leave the planet. So I think there's just continuous layers and different stages that you go through to do
I
this
agree.
work. So
Yeah.
it's heavy, isn't it? Quite a lot there to pull through. And just as well, we look after ourselves to be able
Yeah.
to deal with. It's taxing, isn't it? Emotionally, we were saying this earlier on us.
Yeah, it is. It's just it can be very draining on the body and but I feel like when we come to a place where we recognize when things come up in our bodies that we allow ourselves to feel it, I think uh we are often taught in society to not feel, like don't be angry, don't be sad, you know. Uh, I feel that shifting, but at least for sadness, but anger is still heavily suppressed. And where most people are not equipped to work with anger in a way that supports them. So it tends to be stuck in the body. And that creates a lot of energy conflicts and, illness over time. So when we really learn to work with these emotions, it doesn't feel so taxing because a lot of what is draining us is the fact that we're holding on to this stuck energy and it becomes heavier and heavier and heavier that it pulls us down.
Yeah. Yeah, as I said to you earlier, I think I mentioned in the previous couple of podcasts, I'm on a rest at the moment. I'm not doing any of this stuff. I found it quite taxing on me to continuously do the trauma work. And because I'm an empath like yourself, I was
Yeah.
taking on board people's feelings, emotions, and sometimes illnesses and trying to clear them as well for myself. And it takes a toll. And
It
if
does.
like speaking to people that done shamanism, I've done that. That's how I did it, and it just transitioned to work. All my stuff done in the
It
quantum
does,
field
yeah.
now. Um, if you speak to shamans, they will say every time you heal somebody that's had really severe trauma and you work with them over time, it takes away a bit of your spark. It's like
Mm,
a little death of your own like existence, your spark. And if you don't manage that, some people say that do shamanism that you won't live a long life because your life force energy is being
yeah,
drained.
it's being drained, yes.
So
Yeah.
rest is really important.
It's very important. And I find for me, one of the things that really helps is connecting to the earth, especially when I have a challenging session, because uh, I I have a good amount of those. And sometimes I just have to sit with that energy and just allow it to flow and then try to release it. And I'm realistic and probably know it's going to have elements that linger, but I also just look at it like, okay, I'm really grateful I'm able to help people. And I love where you're at with it. I think it's so important to recognize when we need to rest because those times come and I think we're taught in society to ignore that, keep pushing, keep going. But when we honor those times of rest, we really serve ourselves and it just allows us to continue to do the work we do if we still want to do it. Some of us don't. I know plenty of people that have chosen to stop this work. It can be heavy, as you all know. So
Yeah.
I think we're all on our own path, and it's about figuring that out.
Yeah. I don't think like because my like journey's transitioned through different things since I've been doing it, I think that was a stage of helping people with deep trauma. Whether I'm going to carry on doing it or not, I'll wait and see how I feel after the rest time, however long it'll be. And if I want to go back in it or whether I'll be selective with the people more that who gets my energy, shall we
Yeah.
say, when I'm doing this type of work. I had this conversation before as well. Maybe you're not always meant to do it forever. Maybe you're meant to do it for a period of time.
Yeah.
Like I did funerals for a period of time, 6 years. I do the odd one, but doing funerals was very taxing for me as well. Very
Yeah.
emotional. Being empathic, felt everybody's
Yeah,
emotions and
that's very
everything that
heavy.
was going on, and connection to spirit as well. So
Yeah,
that was a
that's a lot.
pain. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a lot.
I do not like being at funerals for a lot of reasons. I mean, the heavier energies the morning as you, yes, but then when the person who just passed is there, um, although I did have one that was almost funny, because it was so indicative of her personality. When my aunt passed away and I was at her funeral, uh, I felt her arrive,
Mm.
and she was very demanding in life. So I turned to my cousin and I said, "Your mother is here."
They all
Because
go to their own funerals.
yeah, they all go to their own funeral,
Yeah,
yes. And but I try to block from that, but again, I mean, she was an aunt, so it's easier for them to get through when they know you. And I ignored her at first, and then she kept nudging and nudging, and I looked at my cousin, I was like, "Your mother is here." And he's like, "What does she want?" And I said, "She wants the flowers that are on the floor over here." Like, and true to form, this woman would have absolutely organized her own funeral and been upset about how it was arranged. But it turns out um, it was the arrangement was from her best friend. And she wanted it on display for everyone to see because it was initially on the floor where no one could see.
yeah.
So after the service, her best friend came up to me and she said, "Those were mine." And she would have absolutely wanted them on display. Thank you so much. And I was like, "You don't have to thank me." So but that was funny to me.
Yeah,
And then my cousin was like, "Well, that's typical. My
yeah,
mother's arranging her own funeral."
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean,
it was nice we were able to laugh at it at a time when people were mourning.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I had them doing all sorts of things to me at services, but don't get me wrong, I mean, it was a lovely thing to do and it was an honour to do them.
Mhm.
And I remember a lot of the people, but there's a limit to it as well. So people
Yeah.
that do that for many years, maybe they're not as empathic, I don't really know, or you get more used to it. I don't know what the outcome of that is, but I realised I couldn't do it for a lifetime. I did it for a season and that so whether that this is another season and something else is going to come in, paintings, maybe
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, and I think that's really what happens. I love that you bring that up about your paintings. Like this, you might be redirected to focus on this as part of your evolvement and your soul growth. And I think that's a really special thing about what it is to be human. We have these seasons and they shift, and it's about trusting that and following that and not looking at it like, "Oh, I'm not doing this anymore." Like as a failure. It's more of it's a progression, it's a transition, and that could be beautiful. So yeah, I love where you're at with the painting. That is special because I don't paint, so I absolutely admire people who do and do such a beautiful job, and their soul is completely in their work, which yours clearly is. So I'd love that you're sharing that with the world.
Yeah, and they're all channeled. I sit here and I know I'm there. I can feel
Yeah,
it coming in. So I just think, wow, I'll just go with it. This is a bit
yeah,
better than trauma.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's you're very
Yeah,
connected. It's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. So we'll just see where this journey goes. So that's where I'm at the moment. But yeah, I mean, you could be doing this for another 10 years. Just watch your energy while you're doing this and look after
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah,
It,
thank you for that. I
yeah.
take that to heart that I know. Yeah, I recognize that. I appreciate you
Yeah,
saying
it's a
that. And
big
I will
thing.
certainly always look out.
Oh, I'd be really interested to hear how you're getting on with Marie when you do your
Oh yeah, yeah, I'll keep you posted because
yeah,
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
yeah.
It was I felt drawn.
She's lovely. I love her. She's lovely.
Yeah, I like when we just feel pulled and we're like, okay, this is gonna serve in some way. So let me
Yeah.
follow that
I
and
wonder
just see
where
what
you're going to
happens.
go with it once you're qualified.
Yeah, I what I feel I'm probably gonna do is have this blend of her work and how I already do feng shui. I
Hmm.
just anticipate that element within me. And I did that with theta healing too. Like I utilize theta healing, but I also incorporate it in my own way of what works for me and how I see things and how messages come to me. So I think
Yeah.
that's really a good lesson for life in general. Like, how does it work for you?
Yeah, I always think you're drawn to something for a reason, and from experience with spirit, put something in my path, it usually blends in with what I'm doing, and it helps
Exactly.
people in a different way. So you're
Oh,
drawn to it for a reason. So it'd be really cool to find out what that is. So you have to come back, and we need
yeah,
your
yeah,
qualifications, and come back and let us know how you
yeah,
get
I
on
definitely
and
will.
how it works. So, like, how can people find you? Because I did mention to you before, this does go out as a podcast, so the people that just listen rather than watch us. So, would you like to tell us, like, where your website is and how people can find you?
Yeah, my website is my name, so chriswasco.com is pretty easy. I'm on Facebook as well a lot. My business page is at Chris Wasco Medium, and I just post a lot of, inspirational old soul kind of info on there. So um,
And you've got a
that's
YouTube, haven't you?
I do have YouTube. I'm growing my YouTube. That's
Yeah,
Energy Healing with Chris. I've been putting some meditations out just to help people heal,
brilliant. That's
especially
lovely.
from narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, brilliant. A lot of that about. I'll put all the links below the video so people can find you and connect with you. And obviously you'll be tagged in stuff on Facebook so people can connect with you from that. Is there anything on your website that people could find interesting they can pop on and just do? Do you have any freebies or anything on there
I
that
do.
can,
I have some like psychic exercises. People like to kind of see their intuition. I have an old soul quiz. If people want to explore if they're an old soul and how that looks for them. And like I said, on YouTube, I have, energy healing. I actually just released a chakra healing activation, which I'm very proud of because that was absolutely divinely guided. So I love how that one came together.
oh, excellent. I just found your YouTube today, so I'll put myself
Oh,
on
thank
it. So I subscribed. Of course, I'll add all that in. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a lovely conversation. It's really
thank you.
lovely to connect with you.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We'll catch up again soon. Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah.
thank you.
All right. Take care.